Good morning and welcome to Understanding Fake News. My name is Paweł Ngei and I'm a professional software developer and a hacker, meaning somebody who uses technology as it's not meant to be used, analyzes it, tweaks with it, and I'm especially interested in social technologies, especially social networks. For the last few years, I've been working with different fake news specialists like Polish demagog.pl Foundation, and I want to show you how we can look at fake news not only from just the social standpoint, but also from the technology standpoint. So those slides are available at slides.com/pawelngej/fake news 2020. All the links are in there and you will be able to check out all of the sources. If you would like to learn more, especially what are the fact checkers in your area, reporterslab.org has pretty good and comprehensive map of different organizations researching fake news and debunking stuff all over the world. If you would like to find more than just this lecture, I recommend you Advanced Social Media Verification lecture at YouTube. And if you would like to look at how you can work with your students to actually show them how fake news work, there's a really good and well-researched project called GetBadNews.com. So, starting, what are fake news? By definition, by Cambridge Dictionary, those are false stories that appear to be news, spread on the internet or using other media, usually created to influence political views or as a joke. So this is something that has been with us since the beginning of civilization, and we didn't even need to write to be able to spread gossip or fake news. What changed in the last 20 or 30 years is that the rise of the internet and the rise of the social networks change how a lot of social dynamics in the world work and allowed the fake news to propagate much more, affecting a lot more people. I will show you how different aspects of that actually play out. So the question, are they a threat, was much more theoretical when I gave this lecture last year. This year, when we have COVID-19 around us, this is much less of a rhetorical question. We see that there are a lot of threats. And it all started with, or maybe it started getting into the public sphere with anti-vaxxers, people who started opposing vaccines after let's not say fake, but a very manipulated report, which was created by one of the UK researchers, who, as it turned out, was actually paid to discredit how vaccines work. And further scientific debunking didn't convince people that vaccines, which are properly tested, are indeed safe, and created a lot of groups which claim that they know better than experts, that they know better than medical specialists, and they do not trust vaccines, period. This year, the same thing happened with the masks mandated in multiple countries, where a lot of people started spreading unverified or just false medical data, saying that wearing a mask can decrease your oxygen, can cause the viruses that you already have in your body to reinfect you, and that masks are harmful. If you know anything about biology, or if you listen to any medical expert, you will know that this is all not true, or in the best case, just manipulated real information. And not wearing masks endangers societies, so it's a huge problem. We've seen political fake news, and the US elections in 2016 was a huge breeding ground for them, with Donald Trump being probably the first president who started talking about fake news this much. So he actually uses this tactic to discredit people who he doesn't want to talk about, and he calls a lot of materials that are negative towards him just fake news. Uh, Closing the discussion before it starts. But at the same time, some researchers found out that Donald Trump's Twitter profile is one of the biggest sources of misinformation on COVID-19 on the American internet. If we look at the data from the elections of 2016, we can see that 20 most popular fake news were more popular than 20 real stories on Facebook. And looking at Twitter, fake news was 70% more likely to be retweeted than a real news on Twitter. And in a moment, you will see why this may be such a huge thing, what may have caused it. But for now, just please look at how big of a problem it may be for democracy. Then we have situations where fake news can lead to violence and lynches, as is often the case in Pakistan, where a lot of false information spread on WhatsApp, the most popular communicator slash social media platform in the country, is actually used to target and organize lynches on people, often based on totally false information and assumptions. But if any of you think that this shouldn't be a problem in Europe because we have much better digital skills, and we are able to distinguish facts from misinformation, it is not often the case. So what are the reasons for creating fake news? Often it is to display ads, because a lot of the internet is actually built in a way where the content creators are paid for every click. So they often create false articles or articles with phony headlines just to get us to click and to profit from it. For political gain, this can be gain to just discredit other candidate or promote ourselves, but this can be also more insidious to spread some false information in another country as part of espionage. To gain fame, where we can claim that we did something we didn't really do. To create scams, to scam people for money, which is also often the case, or to troll, so spread something for our own enjoyment, while this is really just a totally false information. And as I mentioned before, it's not something that happened today. Fake news have been with us for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And before, in the time of newspapers and media controlled by some narrow groups of people, this was more akin to propaganda and less disrupting social mechanisms we see now, with less groups identifying themselves as belonging to some either conspiracy or some orthodox group believing in some false claims. And what is very important is that every political option is suspected. So whether we are conservative or liberal, no matter what are our political stances, we can fall victim to fake news. And we should be aware of that. We should be aware of those mechanisms, and we should have the tools to actually check if something is false. So looking at social mechanisms of fake news. So how do they work? How do we get affected by them? First, we need to understand the filter bubble. This is probably the most popular quoted source for fake news, but it is not the only one. So filter bubble means that we do not have sources of information. So we do not see some sources of information which would be contrary to our own views. So we may just not see some other points of view. We may not see somebody debunking some information we believe to be true. So some people may choose to surround themselves with just the information they agree with, but the way our social platforms are built, this is more and more the case for even unwilling users, where Facebook, where Google learn what kind of information we would like to encounter and only show us the stories that we would agree with. So, for example, during the Arab Spring a few years back, if Google or Facebook had you figured out as an activist, if you Google Egypt right now, you would see a lot of protest photos and a lot of protest stories. But if you were classified as politically passive but interested in traveling, when Googling Egypt at this point, you would instead see the prices of the hotels and not that anything else is happening there. So basically, filter bubble is not being aware of what is happening outside of the bubble, outside of the sources that are available to you, not necessarily by your own fault, by the way the internet is organized. The second is an echo chamber. So willingly surrounding yourself with people who agree with you. And when encountering some information that is contrary to your views, dismissing it, instead looking for approval of your peers in your group, and polarizing, becoming even more connected to the values of that group. So if you look contrary to filter bubble assumes that we do not have the information that may be contrary to our views, but echo chamber assumes we may have it, we just choose not to listen to it. And a lot of early attempts to fight the fake news were actually focused only on filter bubbles. Now we know that echo chambers are at least as, if not more important when fighting fake news, because there are multiple mechanisms, both social, psychological, sociological, that make us not listen to some stories. So one of them is the confirmation bias. I really like this illustration about the flat earthers, where even when given access to a lot of information, or maybe especially when given access to a lot of information, we look for the information which confirms what we already believe in. So this is the case of Flat Earth Society, which is a real society in the US believing that the Earth is a flat disk and trying to design a scientific experiment which would prove that, so far failing at every one of them. This may be the case with anti-vaxxers, but also with a lot other things, where seeing a lot of information only causes confusion, and people will naturally look for something which is closest to them. Then we have sunk cost fallacy, which is something which is really underestimated. When we put enough work to build our identity, or to build our views based on something, even when seeing that something is wrong with the information we were given, we may still continue doing that just because the cost of changing it is too high. The cost of not only admitting that we were wrong, because a lot of people just put it as you don't want to admit that you are wrong, but also the cost of losing the group you were with, group of people which gave you the sense of belonging. Uh, will be too high. The cost of building yourself anew, which is often the case. And if you watch a documentary about, for example, the Flat Earth Society, you may learn that those are not people who are for some reason just opposed to the idea of globe, but those are people who were really looking for some group to be a part of, to feel the sense of community. And when they felt totally abandoned by most of the groups on the internet and in their daily life, the flat Earth conspiracy allowed them to feel that they are part of something, and they are, even when they encounter information contrary to the flat Earth hypothesis, they will need to ignore it, because this would mean losing access to their group. This is also the case of with a lot of radical groups, whether it's far right or Islamist extremism, where people are not allowed to if they would want to leave, they would lose so much that they would prefer to slowly internalize the values they may even not necessarily agree on rationally. Then we have an authority bias. So this is the celebrity expert problem. When we trust some public figure in one area of our life, or if we are just really interested in their life, which is the case in celebrities, we suddenly start treating them as an expert. That's why there is a huge problem with a lot of football players, with a lot of sports stars, with a lot of movie stars, both in Europe and in the US, which claim that they do not believe in masks, they do not believe in the pandemic we are living through right now. And a lot of people trust them more than they trust their doctors, because the celebrity status makes them more trustworthy in their eyes. But this is also the problem in the scientific community, where, especially in Poland, we have a problem where if somebody is a professor, or if somebody is a well-known authority on one medical or scientific specialization, we suddenly start treating their opinions on other areas, even areas that they do not have any expertise in, as true. So we may have a problem where we give people too much trust where they are not experts in something, where they did not put the work to evaluate a lot of the information themselves. Then we have an association fallacy. I really like this illustration. When 2 is a number and 1 is a number, 2 must equal 1. This is always, not always, this is often the case with medical explanations, or something was debunked. Look at how easily this was debunked. When we have intuitions, or we have some rudimentary understanding on one area of medicine, of science, and we want to project it on another without checking for any empirical experiments which would be able to confirm or contradict that. Where we can say, okay, but if masks allow water to flow through, why wouldn't they allow the virus to flow through? And so on. So this is a problem with basically somebody without an expertise thinking that they do have expertise. And looking at common categories of fake news we may spot on the internet, one of the most popular, if not the most popular, is clickbait. So a headline, a title of the article being sensationalist and often not agreeing with the content of the article. As I mentioned before, this is often caused by our current journalism model, where journalists are actually paid for writing clickbait because this allows them to get money for people clicking into that. So if you see 10 miraculous ways you can lose weight, or you will not believe what this man did, or experts hate this woman for what she found out, or different really sensationalist things, this is called clickbait. This is not necessarily fake news. This can be just written in such way to get people to click on it, but this can cause a lot of chaos, especially with very few people clicking through and reading the bodies of the articles, often going just scroll through the app. This can cause them to internalize the suggestions from the headlines, which may be false, and build their worldview based on those headlines. Then we have trolls, and trolls are basically people who create false information in a false stories on the internet in a provocative way. This can be a kind of art. This can be something malicious. As a hacker, I do appreciate a good troll as something which is really thought-provoking and which can make us question our things. But because of what is called a Godwin law, when you don't really know if somebody's trolling or do they really mean it, especially when lacking all the vocal cues that most people have when reading a text, a lot of people will believe trolls, not questioning them, not stopping to think about them, and the whole effect of ad absurdum of this is too absurd to be true doesn't work. Something becomes a fake story even without the initial malicious intent. I will show you an example of that in a moment. Then we have just fake stories. Those are all outright false, and here you can see both a story which is fake and an example of a clickbait. And this is not as popular in the mainstream news, because fake stories will be only shown to people who may be suspectable. They are the most effective against people who are likely to believe it. So either going with echo chambers, people who already have views which gave them a build up, or people who are not likely to check if the story is fake at all. What is much more prevalent and much more dangerous in the as a category of fake news are fake context, and I will show you that in a moment. So fake quotes, here we have a misattributed quote where somebody trying to put their anti-Antifa point uses a quote by Winston Churchill, which was not said by Winston Churchill at any time. So here we have an appeal to authority, which is false. This can be a misunderstanding when somebody saw a quote and I agree with it, so I will share it, or this can be actually malicious. Then we have fake context, and we can see a photo of somebody aiming a gun to another soldier's head. We can see somebody giving a soldier some water, and this is actually the same photo. So with seeing only part of a photo, we lack the context. We don't know what is really happening in the full of it, and the same happens with a lot of stories. So when we lack context, when we don't have information about something, when something is even not manipulated but just omitted, we may believe that something totally different happened than actually happened. So this is an actual manipulated context story from Polish media. It gathered a lot of attention. So somebody, a troll, posted the story about a French couple who decided to create an art project, have a baby, then abort it and put it into an art vase full of some preservative material to put it in a gallery. So this created a huge outrage in the conservatist parts of the Polish internet, and a lot of actual news agencies covered it, which was surprising. What people did not understand, nobody actually reverse image searched. Nobody checked where does this image come from. This image is a promotional image for a game where this is not an actual baby. The baby is actually a character in a game called Death Stranding. And this was just a prop used for the game. So people assume that something is true without checking it because it was provided to them with that manipulated context. Then another category, we will have celebrity deaths. And this is way similar to clickbait for news agencies, for journalists to get a lot of clicks and a lot of money by claiming that some celebrity died, because a lot of people will want to read how did they die, what happened. And this happens to celebrities quite often. We had basically monthly cases of somebody claiming to be dead only to call the news agency and say, hey, I'm alive, please stop sharing such news. And then we have deepfakes. Deepfakes are images and videos generated by artificial neural networks, or as some people call them, artificial intelligences, which mimic some people, which can manipulate a video where we set movement of a person from an actual video to look totally different. This can be used to put words into their mouth, quite literally. And this is something which is very dangerous, because for the first time in our history, we will not be able to use video as actual proof that something happened, because it's getting easier and easier to create such a thing, where using an average gaming PC may be enough to actually create something that an average news agency will not be able to tell apart from a real video, and where you would need an actual team of computer researchers to analyze something. So right now, it's still being rolled in very slowly when it comes to politics. It's now more an art project where different artists are using faces of the president of the US, the Prime Minister of the UK, and other famous people, to tell them how threatening deepfakes are to our societies. But you can also see a lot of funny or humoristic uses where, for example, somebody created videos of historical figures like Hitler and Stalin singing modern pop songs. So this is something to be aware of. The same happens with video, and the same happens with voice, where you can actually mask your voice using somebody else's tone. Then we have the fact checkers, people and organizations who actually analyze if some fake story was true or was false, or just the context was manipulated. And if you go to Reporters Lab, you will be able to find fact checkers in your language. Those are one of the most popular in the world. Especially Snopes has a lot of stories which are not always political, but for example, urban legends from the US and from the Western world. But there is another danger because during the last elections in the UK, during the debate of Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn, we had a case of somebody impersonating a fact checker. So here you can see the organization which is called Fact Check UK, which didn't exist just minutes before the debate. And if you look closely, you can see that the avatar, that the background looks quite legit, but you can see that this is actually a profile of CCHQ, of the UK Conservative Party. And instead of actually fact checking the debate, this profile was sharing pro-conservative propaganda, and in some cases actual false stories, just to be trusted as a fact checker, because hey, it's a fact checker, it has the Twitter tick sign, it's an actual thing. So here you can also pay attention to this part where on Twitter you can easily change your name, the part on the top, but it's much harder to change this part here, the one with @ here. So even if somebody looks like a well-known public figure from your country, please make note of what is the actual Twitter handle and does this look legitimate. So looking at social media and what are a lot of causes of those processes with fake news in the world. A quote to start. Yeah, so if you ever need info about anyone at Harvard, just ask. I have over 4,000 emails, pictures, addresses, social network logins. What? How did you manage to get that one? People just submitted it. I don't know why. They trust me, dumb fucks. What was said by Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, and the person who controls so much of our lives and lives of 1 billion people with his service. So there is this quote I slightly modified to fit the current world better, that if you don't pay for a service, especially an internet service, you are not, you are its product, you are not its client. For Facebook, you are a product they sell to somebody. You are a product they sell to the ad companies. They get as much information about you as they can. They get, they try to analyze what are your views, what is your sexual orientation, what is your gender, and they sell such a package so that you can be shown ads and be better manipulated by those ads. And this is the case for a lot of free services on the internet. Our emails are actually read by Gmail. Skype can record our calls. Dropbox will open our documents and read them. And this is just the base business model of our internet. Moreover, social media was created to keep us addicted, to keep us scrolling, even if we don't find any stories which are interesting, especially so that we don't find any longer stories we would like to read instead of just scrolling through. And this is created with a mechanism called FOMO, the fear of missing out, fear that if we will not keep scrolling, we will actually miss out on something very interesting, something that is very important to our life. We will not be invited to a party. We will not know about this latest news that all our friends will be talking about. So we need to keep scrolling. We need to be there. And moreover, all the design of our mobile devices, our smartphones were designed to keep this feeling of FOMO and to keep the notifications so that we keep looking at our infinite feeds that will never end, that will just keep us scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And this is done because our attention is a commodity. all of the social networks currently out there actually want us to keep scrolling. Every social network that uses ads gets paid the more we scroll. And Facebook, if you look into it, has a lot of research papers published manipulating people, actually getting them outraged or getting them upset in order for them to be scrolling, showing them what is called outrage porn, so that they will see that someone is wrong on the internet and I need to correct them, showing them stuff that they will agree on, so that they will want to read the story and see how much they are right, but just in a moment to keep scrolling to see something that they do not agree with, but in a very limited way, so that they can just sigh and say, oh, those people are so stupid, I'm glad I am so right. And the more they scroll, the more they see all those things, the more money all those companies make. We have even more processed version of this with what is called content farms. If you see on YouTube, you can see that on multiple sites like BuzzFeed, like I don't know the names, but there are a lot of sites where you have this 42 holy grail tricks that will save you a fortune. You have actual well-optimized psychologically researched way of creating clickbait titles where you need to put a number, some adjective, and then hacks or recipes or something that will, and something that will make you believe that this will change your life. So those are videos of some hacks, some tricks to do in your life, which will apparently impact it in a major way, which in reality, most of them are not even true. Most of them are false. And in the case of recipes, this is actually hard, but they are so optimized in all the marketing ways that we will want to keep browsing them. And if you see content farms, companies which specialize in creating repetitive content like this, they often use very similar or identical videos in multiple of their videos, just splicing them, showing parts of them, and often not even showing what is in the title and what is on the thumbnail, but just keeping you watching, and every few minutes you will see an ad. And YouTube algorithms actually rewards them for that. YouTube algorithm will promote them. You can see the most popular video from this content farm, 5-minute crafts, has 280 million views. It made a lot of money to this company. Then we have micro-targeting, where the more some social media company, the more an ad company knows about us, the more we can be manipulated, and not we as a random person, but we as a person they know well. So this happened. We know that a company, Cambridge Analytica, used micro-targeting in several cases, like in the US elections of 2016 and the British Brexit referendum, where they singled out people that they deemed the most prone to manipulation and showed them different content. So for example, if somebody in the US has recently lost a job, they were displayed an ad saying, hey, you lost your jobs because of those Mexicans coming from from over the border, but we can stop the illegal immigration, and fine people like you will not lose their jobs. If in the UK somebody was anti-Brexit, and they couldn't be swayed, the algorithm said that there's very little chance of actually swaying them to vote for Brexit. Instead, they were shown ads to convince them that no sane person will vote for Brexit. There's no reason for you to leave your house and go to the referendum, because nobody will leave. It's just a fake referendum. It's just something for the people to finally see that we will not leave, and let's end this. And this kind of manipulation is much more effective than a regular ad campaign. So a lot of companies want to use it, and in case of Cambridge Analytica, use it to a great extent. So this is another case of fake news and case of outright manipulation by showing us news which are specifically created for us. Then we have the retweet button. So this is also known as share button on different social networks such as Facebook. But it is a pretty simple engineering idea which created really great effect and great success in Twitter popularity, which contributed to a huge spread of fake news because people would often post some article with a clickbaity headline, and then without reading the article, without actually analyzing it in any way, they would click retweet, spread it, and other users would click retweet, spread it. And this way, an article which is often totally illegitimate if you only read it gets very popular, and people get the idea from just the headline. So even the engineer who created this function, the retweet function, the share function, says that it can be very dangerous, and it contributed to so much fake news that he actually called for Twitter to change it. And this year, Twitter decided that at least in some areas, it will actually require people to click on the article and read it before allowing them to share the story further. Then we have a political ad ban on Twitter. So last year, seeing how much damage the political ads created on social networks, the creator of Twitter decided that they will completely ban all political ads. So no political candidate will be allowed to post anything. This is taught with the assumption that this will actually decrease the amount of political content on Twitter, but it's not so easy. Because first, what is political content? Activism in a lot of countries is actually considered political on Twitter. So if we have a case for where, for example, a local company does something, for example, pollutes the local rivers, and local activists would like to start showing ads showcasing this and getting people's attention, the company can spread their version of the story because this is a commercial ad, but the activists are actually being deemed too political, and they will not be able to post their side of the story. Moreover, this actually gets people to post political content not as ads, but as actual content using something called troll farms. So there are very specialized and really well prepared companies which actually create a lot of fake accounts which then share some content on the internet and spread some information. The algorithms of social networks such as Twitter or Facebook are actually designed to popularize the stories that are being shared by users the most. And often it is not checked if those accounts, those users are actual users. So if your story is shared by, let's say, 20,000 fake accounts, it will land on the front of a lot of people's Twitter feeds just because it was shared so much. Moreover, the people are often not sharing, the accounts are often not sharing external stories, but posting something as their views. And this is usually a very similar piece of text. If you search, for example, Twitter or Facebook for this exact quote, you will see that, let's say, 15,000 users formulated their sentence in an identical way. But this is made to create those echo chambers, to convince actual people that there are a lot of other actual people that agree with them. And if there is a political campaign, a lot of time the campaigners will basically not even notice that they are not paying Twitter as the ad company. They will pay the troll farm to show their ads. We also had cases where troll farms actually look for profiles of recently deceased people and actually steal them. So some people actually found their dead grandmas or uncles sharing fake news on the internet. But then we have other kinds of social media. You may have not heard about them, but those social media are not relying on the same kind of monetization as Twitter or Facebook, and they do not rely on FOMO. They do not want to commodify your attention. They do not want to keep you scrolling. They are proposals of how differently we can actually create our internet habits and how we can create a different infrastructure. So one of the most interesting example, and disclaimer, I am a contributor to this social network. I actually wrote some code which ended up being used in Mastodon as Mastodon as a microblogging platform. It works similar to Twitter, but there is not a single server. So users can create their own smaller servers for their school, for their neighborhood, for their city, and they can share their messages there. So they will see each other, they will see their posts, the tags will be available locally. And then if they would like to talk to somebody from a different city, from different community, they can add them as friend. And the trick is that they will only see the local posts and the posts from their friends. So if they would, if any troll farm would like to create a server and create 20,000 fake accounts, those accounts will not be heard by anybody because Mastodon only shows you content that is shared by people you chose to follow. That you will not see fake news shared by fake accounts impersonating somebody as long as you don't follow that person first. So this solves a lot of problems that Twitter and Facebook has. It doesn't show ads because each server is basically paid by whoever hosts it, so whoever has the machine at their place. If you would like to rent such a server from a company, it costs currently in 2020 between 6 to 12 euro for a small version that you could use at your school. If you are interested, you can basically set up such a server within a day. Renting it from a specific company, and you can use it at your school even as a project to show your students that other social media can work differently, that we are not limited to only the social media which do want to commodify our attention. On Mastodon, you will not see the most popular posts first. You will see everything chronologically. So you can actually demonstrate how different assumptions can be made when designing a social network. Then there is hypothesis, and hypothesis is very interesting because it's not the same kind of social network. It is not a place where you have a feed to scroll through. It is not a place where you have messages from your friends or vacation photos. This is a browser extension and a community that you can join. And together with people in your community, you can start annotating actual other pages on the internet. So if you see a page, you can leave a comment highlighting some part of the web page, and other people from your community can see it. Let's say you have a fake news debunking club, and one person spots that in a very popular news story in your area, something is not right, and they can leave a comment, and other people within their group can see that comment, can build on it, and can add more sources. So this is something which is really great for annotating the internet. And if you want, you can contact Hypothesis as an educational institution, and they can set you up with a small version of their server for free. Moreover, there's Polis. Polis doesn't work as a social network with scrolling either, but this is a platform which is used by the Taiwanese government to create law proposals and to create consensus among the users. So the goal is for every person registered to answer a few questions, and then Polis maps them, as you can see on a graph, with several axes showing what are their views and suggesting how this situation can be solved where everybody agrees on something. So after plotting the initial proposal, you can add more proposals and see how people will actually react to that until you find something that everybody agrees to. So Polis is something that is used to create actual law. The law regarding Uber was passed thanks to Polis in Taiwan. And if you would like, you can reach out to Polis. And again, as an educational institution, they can offer you a small test version of their software. So you can try working on it with your students and try to find something which leads, trying to find a consensus on some hard question. This shows us that it's not true that social media need to spread hatred to keep us with this outrage porn where we just keep being shown all the things we don't agree with. Social media can be also designed to build consensus and the sense of community among its users. It's just that so far we haven't decided that this is an important design feature. Then something more traditional, it's WT Social, Wiki Tribune created by the creator of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales, which tries to marry a Facebook-like social network with the idea of Wikipedia, where you don't have a magical feed that will decide that you will see only the most popular posts first. WT Social allows you to join some groups, and then you will see the news stories posted by the members of those groups. And as a member, you can actually add more sources, edit those news. And for example, if you think that the headline is too clickbaity, you can very easily modify it so that other users will see what is the actual content of that. And again, this is not perfect because somebody can troll and can add a lot of fake sources or can manipulate headlines even farther, but it allows you to see things from, allow you to see content from other members of the community that you are able to see, and you know who did what. This is not completely anonymous. I don't know those people. So the sense of community is much higher. And finally, how not to fall for fake news. If we think that some story we are reading may be fish, maybe fake, or it's just real, it feels really good and it totally agrees with my views, let's see how can we analyze if it really is that good. So the first and most important thing is lateral reading. We don't just read down the page. We don't read what is on the page. We read the whole context that is around it. And the first question we can ask ourselves is it a clickbait? Is it something that is where the headline doesn't correspond with the text? Or does the headline suggest something? Does the headline suggest an interpretation? If so, this can be manipulative. This may not be an outright fake news, but this can manipulate us in some way. Then we can ask ourselves, is the web page, is the TV recording, is the video, is the source from which we are accessing this content legitimate? And there are multiple ways to create something looking legitimate, because we can, for example, use homoglyphs. So of course we can put just typos, and instead of Washington Post, we can create a web page called Washington Post without the first A, and a lot of people will believe that this is an actual thing. But there is something much more insidious called homoglyphs. A lot of internet providers, a lot of the internet providers in different countries will allow to register the domain names with foreign alphabets. So in Polish case, we had a situation where a well-known mBank was impersonated with by mBank with that slight dot under the letter K. So it is not a Latin symbol. So a lot of people just assume, I have something dirty on my screen, and the address looked legitimate. The SSL certificate, the green padlock on the address bar was okay. So a lot of people believe that this is an actual source, but since it had that little dot, it was not legitimate. And the same can happen with a lot of fake characters, like for example, A and algebraical A, for example, 0 and O, for example, D and algebraical D. So this is something that we should be careful when checking for the source of some news. Further, we have a wonderful tool called the Wayback Machine, which is hosted by the Internet Foundation, which is basically the archive of the most popular websites on the internet. And they are creating snapshots, like photos of those pages in different points in time, depending on the traffic on the page. So you can actually input the address of this page and see it claims that it's been around since, let's say, 2010. We can see, are there any snapshots from 2010, or was it registered only yesterday? Was it registered a week ago? And we can see different versions of how this web page looked like. What's important, if we don't see it here, it doesn't mean that it's completely manipulated, but it means that it had very few guests. It had like below, let's say, 1,000 views a day, so it wasn't cataloged. And the Wayback Machine is a great resource for accessing all their web pages. Also, it's a great resource if you know a web page with some content that vanished from the internet and you would like to get back. Sadly, it doesn't catalog a lot of photos because they are pretty heavy when it comes to memory storage, but you can find text from a lot of places. Then we check the author of the text and date. Is the author a legitimate person? Is it likely that this author actually wrote this article? We check the date. Maybe this is one of the most problematic kinds of context manipulation, when the article, the author, and everything is legitimate, but it's, for example, an article from 3 years ago, and it tells a story about a very similar situation, but it's not exactly this because the date is different. Such was the case with the Fact Check UK I mentioned before, where we had somebody claiming to be fact checker, but was actually one of the parties debating. We cannot assume that this author is legitimate in this case. Then we check the sources used in this article. So if the article actually linked to a scientific research paper, if it's linked to some other article, some video, somebody's web pages, are those legitimate? Do they actually say what it says within the article? And we can actually Google for them. We can use browsers, and what's very interesting, different browsers can give you very different very different results, because Google, for example, already has an idea what you would like to see and will show you stuff that will mostly agree with your views. But you can use DuckDuckGo, you can use Bing, you can use Yahoo, and they will give you more context on what you are actually looking for. Then we can use an advanced syntax. So you can search for things with higher accuracy by, for example, putting it in quotes. If you put something in quotes, the search engine will look for all the words in the exact same order as you put it here. If you put a plus before something, the search engine will only show results with those exact words or this exact word. So for example, if it finds something with a similar word but not exactly that, it will ignore it. It will show you only the results with this exact phrase. If you put minus, it will not look for this phrase. So often you will want to look for something very specific, like you want to look for Madonna, but Madonna the actress, not Madonna the religious figure. So you can actually put minus in order to narrow down your search. You can put what is called in URL colon and without a space the name of the site, and the results will be only on this specific site and none other. So if you want to look through archives of some site which doesn't give you an easy search option, you can get a search engine to do the work for you. And after this in URL sample site.com, you just put more words and those words will be searched. Then if you are not sure, for example, how something is written, you can replace the characters you don't know with this star. This is Shift and 8 on US keyboards. And it will replace those characters with any character. It will show you, for example, different numbers if you are not sure what kind of version of a technical product you are looking for. Then you can check the quotes used in the article. Are the quotes legitimate? Does this person really say that? Did they say it in the right context? Is the quote manipulated? You can check the comments if the website actually allows comments. In a lot of cases, you will find a lot of political infighting, but sometimes somebody may have already done your work and may have already searched for all this and you can find everything confirmed or debunked with the sources you find in comments. Then you can do reverse image search. So Google and some other search engines allow you to actually give it an image or a link to an image, and it will look for other copies of this image. So you will be able to see, was this image manipulated? Maybe this version of image has some element that was only added in this instance. Maybe this image is also used in some other article which claims something else, and you are able to actually see if this is exactly what it appears to be. Then, is it a troll? How likely it is that somebody posted this story as something either malicious or something funny, and it got misunderstood. This was the case with the photo I shown you about the creators of the game holding the sculpture of a baby. And then it's always important to ask yourself, am I biased? May I have some bias against or for this article? Does it really say what I think it says if I read it carefully? Does it support my views, or is it, for example, neutral? Or is it not biased as I think it is? And then you can see other sources and fact checkers like the Reporters Lab I mentioned earlier. Maybe somebody actually took a look and did all the research. Reporters Lab has a really good list. If you go to their map, you will be able to check different languages and the different countries. As far as I know, they do not have a universal search engine for all the fact-checking sites they have, but you can check one by one. So, summing it up, check if something is a clickbait. Check the outlet from which you are reading or watching it. Check the author and the date. Check the sources given. Check the quotes given. Check the comments under the article. Do the reverse image search if an image is an important part of it. For example, maybe the photo from the protest is not from this protest. Maybe it was posted 5 years ago from some protest in a different part of the world. Is it trolling? Did I understand it correctly, or is it humorous or malicious? Am I biased? And are there other sources and do fact checkers actually write about it? Did they research it first? So if you would like to read more about it, the slides are available under this address. If you would like to read about fact checkers from your country, you can check reporterslab.org for more advanced social media verification with reverse image searching, with social media crawling, with some usage of maps. Check this link. And if you want to look for a simple game to explain fake news to your student, check getbadnews.com. So thank you. This is all, and goodbye.